So at this point, I've created a good, fairly tight ball that I can use as the starting point for my little penguin. So now is when the fun part kind of starts to happen. I'm now going to start adding colors and different shapes on my penguin to start bringing it to life so it looks less like an egg and more like the final design that I want to see. I'm going to now start using some black roving, and again I'm just going to gently kind of peel it away to separate the fibers and work with smaller pieces. I want to create a nice kind of almost like heart shape around the head of the penguin. So I'm going to start just by taking some of this roving and using my single needle, and I'm going to be using a heavier needle to start just to make that attachment, and I'm going to place this kind of where I want it to be attached. I don't mind if I have some extra loose fibers at this point because I can always trim some of those away, but you do want to have a little extra because as you start felting, things are going to almost kind of shrink up on you. So I'm just going a little slow and deliberate at first just to make that initial attachment. And it only took a couple stabs to really attach this fairly well. If it was in the wrong place or I wasn't happy with it, I could absolutely just pull it off of my shape. That's the thing about felting. It is pretty adaptable and forgivable. Once I have this kind of initial bit of black roving attached, now I'm just going to kind of pull it to each side, thinking about the kind of design and shape that I want this to take. So I'm going to kind of hold it in place and just kind of work all along that edge back and forth just to kind of tack it into place. So now I've kind of worked to cover the back of my penguin with the black roving. It didn't take very long. I was able to work with the pen felting tool just to kind of work over this large area. And again, there are definitely still some loose fibers, but I'm not going to worry too much about that at this point. Everything is pretty secure, and now I can start kind of shaping this a little bit more, and then adding some of the other decorative details that will make this little penguin really come to life. So right now, my penguin is still very egg-shaped. I do want to kind of work to define a little bit of a neck to separate the head from the body. So what I can do, the more I felt, the tighter the fibers are going to get. So I'm going to kind of work and felt a little bit heavier in these areas just to kind of tighten up these fibers and kind of pull this shape in, just so it has a little bit of definition and kind of sculpting the shape that I want to see. So the next step that I'm going to tackle is adding some little wings onto my penguin, just to give him a little dimension. I could absolutely do this in 2 separate steps, but I'm going to try to work a little smarter and not harder. So instead of doing 2 separate wings, I'm actually going to kind of felt this big strip all at once, and then I'm going to kind of attach it to create the little wings on each side. Whenever you're working on these little kind of like add-ons. Like if you're making legs or feet or a head, you kind of are going to want to felt them separately and then attach them once it's kind of formed. It's a little easier to work that way. Be careful that your project doesn't felt to the mat. So as I'm working on felting this, I am going to constantly like pick it up and flip it over and rotate it around. That way I'll be sure that my fibers don't lock into the mat. I was able to get 2 wings that are pretty symmetrical and they're pretty dense. So these are going to really hold up. And I've got a lot of excess roving here between the wings that's going to allow me the opportunity to really securely attach these on so they definitely won't fall off later. So what I'm going to do first is just kind of loosely place these where I think they look good. I kind of want them a little bit kind of sticking out and forward. And I'm just going to kind of hold them in place. I'm going to do a couple of quick stabs on either side just to begin the process of like tacking these down. Using a nice heavy needle, and I'm making sure as I poke in, I'm going all the way through the wing and into the body. And that's going to help really interlock those fibers together. So the more I do this, the more secure that connection is going to be.